Hey, what's up, guys? I'm going to be going over some multiband dynamics or multiband compression tips for Ozone 5. You kind of have to look at multiband compression as something that will save your life, for one. And secondly, think of it as an EQ where the bands adjust themselves. It's kind of just think of it as a compressor, but in a specific EQ band, and that's basically what this is, the multiband compression. So how you want to look at it is you want the audio to really be grabbed on the low end, right? Just to kind of smooth out any kind of slappiness in the bass. So you can do that with a pretty fast attack. And you can do this with the gain reduction view or gain reduction trace. Right, and the red lines, are gain reduction. Another thing to keep in mind is when starting out, you want a very smooth ratio. So 2-to-1 is very smooth. So that's always a good thing. When you're up at the higher kind of ratios or the higher bandwidth, you can use, depending on the audio, you can use a 4-to-1. I used 1.5 to 1 because I wanted it to be kind of smooth. I'll just solo that. Right, you want that punchiness in the high end. You don't want punchiness in the low end because then you get like a really flubby kind of bass. And always look at the gain reduction. Right, we're getting a lot of snap there. Another thing, it's really, really important that you figure out and you learn what attack and release does. So a very fast attack, which is 0 milliseconds, right? It squishes the transient, which is what goes from which goes from soft to loud, right? And as you increase that, you get more of the transient coming through because the compressor is lagging. The gain reduction is lagging. Right, we got that click, click, click going on, and that gives a perception of punchiness, right? So let's do it now. You can kind of hear it on that high end. That's all good to go. So yeah, another tip is to listen to something solo and then listen to it in context with its neighboring band. So I wanna know what the kick and the bass, the punchiness of this mid kick, like right there, the punchiness of the mid kick, and like the low end. I want to know how they're kind of talking to each other. So I'll solo both of them. That I can hear it in a context, So you listen to each band until you get, your desired effect, right? And then you listen to it in context with a band above it or below it, right? And then also bypass it all. Right. I mentioned 2-to-1 ratio, always your friend for the compressor section. You can sometimes go 4-to-1. 4-to-1's a bit more intense. 4-to-1 is for like rock drums, and you can go all the way up to like 30-to-1, which is insane. But 4-to-1 is nice and gentle. I shouldn't say that's rock drums. Rock drums are a very high ratio. So yeah. What you should be focusing on is the compressor to grab the low end, to be more like really reactive. If you can see it here, very reactive on the low end, right? That compressor is, catching everything, and there's a lot of movement, and that gives the perception of drive in your tracks, because this is trance, you want that. And as you go up in your bandwidth, you want the compressor to be more musical. right? So right about there, a little less intense. As we go up, we'll check this guy out. Right, the release and the attack. The release is very smooth, and it kind of syncs with the music as the release fully, releases. Something happens, and the audio goes over the threshold, and then it goes down again. So it bounces, and it's very kind of musical, and that would be like unreactive. So there's reactive and unreactive. Yeah. That's basically it. You don't always have to use 4 bands. You can remove a band. You can only use 3. You can use 2, or you could just use 1 as a kind of glue-ish compressor beforehand. So we've done that in the previous videos. So you can add just a simple dynamics guy, remove band. And what's going on here? What are you doing? Right, so we can have this way. We can have it this way. So I want the kick in the bass before I process it to be very, very tame, depending on what kind of problems you have with it. Oh, I might want to turn that off. There we go. Right, and I would affect this. And then I'd leave this kind of just bypassed. So a good kind of bypass setting would be 1-to-1. So no gain reduction at all. Right, so that's another kind of technique you can use. Another thing you can look at is your crossover type. Usually, yeah, I'd stick to hybrid. Analog might add a bit of like warmness or something, and digital is very digital, so you can have a very small kind of crossover size of 128 and the crossover Q of a lot, and then we'll add a few. Yeah, so very, very tight crossover, which is so it more, there's more flexibility and more control, or you can have it more smooth, like like an analog type thing. But generally, I wouldn't do this. You'll get like weird aliasing and artifacts. But depending on your audio, you can give it a try. Right, it's more of an extreme cut. Sounds like 48 or 36 decibels per octave. But yeah, all right, I rambled on enough. That was our compressor settings, or our multiband dynamics, which will save your life. So I suggest you learn them, and have a good one. All right, take care.